Hi everyone, Melanie here, Employer Engagement Coordinator at Mesa College. And I'm going to talk a bit about communication in person and online environments. This is especially important because now that we will be doing a lot of online learning and probably more of it in the future, even when we do come back to campus, it's a good idea to just start thinking about different communication styles. So I'll just cover briefly what we mean by communication. What I'm doing right now is communication. Sending a message across to people is communication. So it's exchanging information. It's a two-way process and our way of being understood. If you have good communication, it can have a positive and mobilizing effect. So think about people who are great speechwriters or great speakers. Think about, people who create movies and awesome commercials. Like if the communication is well done to get a certain point across, then it's going to have a mobilizing effect. But on the contrary, if there's poor communication going on, it could lead to negative consequences. Misunderstandings, mixed feelings, distortion of goals, conflict. So we can see, bigger picture how this could be a problem in our communities. But think about it, how it might fit in your everyday life, and especially in your academic life. So how you communicate with your faculty, with your professors, with staff and other students, and even family and friends who are supporting you through school is going to be important in terms of how you communicate with them. So a lot of times when we think of communication, we think of verbal communication. So that's when we're speaking to each other in a conversation, casually over the phone, what I'm doing right now, anything where you're hearing words. So this is going to be important in understanding communication is important in everything that you do. Written communication is also important, and we don't give it as much credit when it comes to our everyday lives. But having effective writing through your emails, instant messaging, even when you're doing chats, that's much more important now that we're going to be communicating this way with our professors and even in our professional business lives. It's going to become a lot more important, the written communication part. I mean, how many of you can remember the last time you actually called someone just to have a conversation? Or did you text? So this is where the importance of written communication comes into play. And it is important because we hear from a lot of employers who do have some challenges with employees who are not very great at communicating through their writing, and that can create a lot of misunderstandings. Visual communication is what I mentioned earlier with media. It's using art, drawing, photos, sketches, anything visual to send a message. So this is also becoming a lot more important in school, especially now that we're going online. There may be more opportunities to turn in assignments or offer information through different types of media, not just writing papers or through lecture. So videos are going to become a lot more prominent. PowerPoints would be considered a visual. So as you can see, basically everything we do as human beings when we're interacting with other human beings is a form of communication. And if any of you are interested in this, then communication studies is an excellent major that a lot of students look into, where this is your life, is learning and understanding the art of communication. So before we end about this topic, how many of you realize that the majority of our communication and when it comes to first impressions of people is based on your body language? It's not the tone, it's not what you're actually saying. In fact, if you look at this image, only 7% of spoken words is what happens with a first impression. So what you're saying may not even matter, it's your body language and then tone of voice. So this is really important. If you study people in politics, people who are performers, how they use their body to communicate and the tone that they use is really important. So think about how this will affect you in your everyday life. If you are on a Zoom call and you are on video, but you're looking down, you have like a really straight face, you look really bored, that can affect how other people might perceive or may interpret what you're thinking. And while we have the control to take our videos off, it is good practice now that we're seeing more and more topics based on Zoom meetings and virtual classrooms, that it is important to try to have our face showing if at all possible, so that we can have better communication with our peers and with our faculty. So if at all possible, think about where your comfort level is with that so that you can have better rapport and possibly open up more of that communication channeling with video. So this is a little fun image. It kind of shows you a chart on some of the different types of, well, I guess, preferred communication depending on what generation people may come from. So think about where you might fit in, what your preference of communicating is. I know for me, it's definitely texting. I find that as my primary mode of communication versus phone call. The email part is really something that I have to do with work. And it also comes in handy when it has to do with work and school, because you have that paper trail, if you may. You have something you can go back and refer to if you need it. I don't know when the last time I actually wrote a letter and sent that out with a stamp. And like I mentioned, phone calls, I'm trying to be better at that, especially now with quarantine, to connect more with friends, but it's usually not my go-to. So understanding this about yourself is important when it comes to the workplace, when it comes to a time where you're maybe doing an internship, volunteer work, and even connecting with your faculty. Faculty tend to let you know how they like to communicate as part of their class, but it is also a good idea to be aware of who you're working with and what type of communication they work best in. So to wrap this up, how do we make communicating a bit easier? So, when it comes to your learning, part of that is asking questions. So it's imperative that we practice asking questions. Now, we may have to think about the best mode to deliver that question, right? Would it be asking the question through email, through a chat, calling someone, walking, well, we can't really walk into people's offices right now or face-to-face, but finding someone that might know the answer and speaking to them. Find what may be best for you depending on the situation, and keep track of your questions and the answers. I know for me, if I don't write it down or figure it out some way to hold on to that information, I might forget. So if you're asking a question and someone's answering it for you, take some notes down. Um, a lot of people don't realize that when you speak and you're smiling, it really changes not only the tone, it changes your face, and it changes the perception that other people might have. So it brings on more of that friendly persona. And that is important when you also want to talk to somebody who's maybe new, to help them feel more comfortable. Even when your face isn't showing. So if you're on the phone or if you're on a Zoom call, but your video is off, when you're speaking, if you speak smiling, that changes the tone of your voice and it makes you sound friendlier. So it's a great thing to practice, especially when you are maybe speaking to someone who you're asking, you know, for a favor, right? So a letter of recommendation or a job, whatever that may be. Make sure you're smiling even though they can't see you. Be respectful of people's time. I think right now with remote learning, it's very important because whether you're experiencing this or not, more people now that are teaching or working online tend to feel like they're busier because their schedules are getting blocked a lot more with different Zoom meetings. So now that you take away commuting time and people just assume you're home, and you assume that you're going to be home, so you don't need that extra time, meetings start getting piled up. And you know, think about professors that are teaching class. They might have classes back to back. So whenever you're asking someone a question or you need more clarification, be mindful of where they might be at with their schedule and try to find information on your own as much as possible and then ask questions so that you can cut out some of the unnecessary time for other people. So that's my presentation on how to be an effective communicator. You'll hear from some of our other team members about 21st century skills and where communication comes into play. And then also I have a segment on cross-cultural communication. Thanks, bye.